Facebook puts your show on mute. The latest from Podnews.net with Podpage. Build a beautiful podcast website in 5 minutes. Got licensed commercial music on your podcast? Facebook will edit it out, muting your show instead, according to Christina Zeman. She claims to pay licensing fees for the music she uses on her podcast, but says Facebook automatically mutes any copyright music, irrespective of the licenses she's bought. The shortlists have been announced for the Sports Podcast Awards 2022. 13 countries are represented. You can register to be a judge on the awards website. Can you help a PhD student at the University of York? They're working with BBC R&D, conducting a survey to understand how podcast listening experiences are influenced by the environmental context in which they're consumed. You can take part. We've linked to their survey in our show notes and our newsletter today. Rode has announced the Video Mic Go 2. It's an on-camera microphone that adds USB-C output and a new acoustic design to their original shotgun model. AdLarge has signed a partnership with G Networks for ad sales. PodTrack has added multi-user accounts and data export capabilities. Karina Bellizzi and Julie Loken have launched Femcasters, a community dedicated to amplifying female voices worldwide. The Library of Congress has acquired the full 40-year body of work from audio documentary producers The Kitchen Sisters. Podcast producer Ella Watts has been working with the BBC. Beyond Podcasting interviews her about audio fiction and the pandemic. And if you're writing fiction podcasts, Shaw Scripts has a fiction podcast contest where you could get $5,000 to produce a pilot episode and $1,000 of cash. This year's final deadline is January the 21st. It's $55 to enter. Hot Docs has announced the full 2022 Hot Docs Podcast Festival programme. The event was to be a hybrid event, but it's now a virtual event, thanks Omicron, and one of the oldest podcasts in the world for immediate release with Neville Hobson and Shell Holtz has joined the Marketing Podcast Network. The podcast also now has new, more frequent short shows too. In People News, Amanda Nazareno has been hired as Director of Education at the Podcast Academy. She was selected for Spotify's first Sound Up cohort and has been podcasting since July 2018. Nick Harnett is Acast's new PR and Marketing Manager for the UK and Ireland. Audie Cornish, who left NPR's All Things Considered last week, is to join CNN. She'll be podcasting and presenting a weekly show on CNN+. Hannah Martin will become the new host of Modern Love from the New York Times. She joined the Times last year. Elise Bergerson has joined Verve Talent and Literary Agency as a podcast agent. She'd worked for This American Life, Serial Productions, and the S-Town podcast before consultancy work. And in podcast news, Say Their Name returns for a second season and focuses on the stories of black people who are assaulted and killed by the police, with an emphasis on the women who often get overlooked. The first episode in the series looks back at Miriam Carey. Any economics podcast would probably aspire to getting the UK Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, as a guest. Jimmy's Jobs of the Future explores the future of the economy through the prism of jobs, and Sunak joins host Jimmy McLaughlin, a former UK political advisor to former Prime Minister Theresa May and current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. It's produced by Mags Creative. Violating Community Guidelines with Brittany Broski and Sarah Shower is new this week from Studio 71. From firearm sales on Facebook Marketplace to AI influencers and deep fakes on Instagram and TikTok. This podcast will cover offbeat topics that have you asking, is this allowed? But more importantly, is this even legal? And Disgraceland returns for a new season today, starting with a premiere episode focused on Taylor Swift's stalkers, vanishing masters, love letters, and more. The show is on Amazon Music, with selected shows also released via RSS, and claims it's the #1 most downloaded music podcast in the world. And this podcast is brought to you by Podpage. Do you know, the one thing every good podcast needs is a website, and Podpage lets you build one for free, which you can customize. You can add mailing lists and contact forms, and it does episode pages. It basically does everything, and you can use it for free and upgrade for more features. Go to podpage.com/podnews to get started. And that's the latest from our newsletter. For all the links, we're at podnews.net.